What's up again, everybody? It's been about a week since I uploaded the last one of these, part 3 of this Batman card preview, and I apologize for the tardiness, but I've got another set of cards here to take a look at along with you, so let's jump right in. Okay, so let's quickly talk about the Gadgeteer ability that we can see on both of these versions of the question, as well as the version of the question that we saw in the last video. In the last video, I talked about how cool it would be to pair Gadgeteer along with Anger Issues, something that buffs up attacking characters and deals a lot of damage, gives a lot of value to something like this. But since I last recorded the audio for that video, it has been revealed that this ability only works with continuous action dice and not non-continuous action dice. So anything with a continuous keyword can be gadgeteered, but non-continuous action dice cannot be used with the Gadgeteer ability. So because of that, this ability is not nearly as powerful as many of us thought before that was revealed, since you can't move over those really good action dice, because most of the good action dice are non-continuous actions. There are only a handful of good continuous action dice, and really only a handful of continuous action dice currently. So with that in mind, let's take a look at this common version of the question. The common version of the question is a 2-cost mask character with the Justice League affiliation, the Gadgeteer ability, and an 013, 014, 124 stat line. And with the common version only having Gadgeteer and no other secondary ability, this means that we can value this card purely on its stat line versus purchase cost value, as well as potential continuous action dice that can be cycled with the ability. There are certainly more aggressive stat lines on the 2-cost characters, including in this set, so if you're buying this character for its stat line, then it's going to be underperforming as an attacker. It's okay as a blocker, but definitely not going to cut it when it comes to attacking. I say this as an attacker because the Gadgeteer ability is a win attacks ability, so if you want to use this character's ability, you need to push with it. And as for the quality of the ability itself, there aren't a lot of continuous actions from other sets that benefit greatly from entering play at the beginning of the attack step. There are a few interesting interactions like cycling a delayed blast fireball each turn, maybe pulling out and using the rare cold gun, and maybe even pulling out lantern battery power source to force your opponent to pay life to block. And maybe as other cards come out, this character may get better, but as of right now, this ability just does not have enough usefulness to justify running this character regularly. I'd give this a 2 in constructed only because you can run this as sort of a control piece with delayed blast fireball and the distract global. That'd be kind of cool to see. This is a 1 in draft as I haven't seen a strong continuous action from this set as of yet. I do admit that I might be out of the loop and there might be some great in-set continuous actions, so that could change in the draft portion, but I'll stick with that 1 as of right now. Looking at the rare version of the question, we see that it is a 3-cost mask character with that same stat line, same affiliation, the Gadgeteer ability again, and this one says, while the question is active, if you control no villain character dice, he gains Regenerate. So again, the stat line for a 3-cost character is really low, but the defensive stat line combined with the Regenerate ability makes for a decent blocking character. Regenerate also makes this more of a sticky character, which is what you want when you take into account the Gadgeteer ability, which of course is a win attacks ability. But again, this ability is kind of handcuffed by the lack of good continuous action dice. That being said, if some good continuous action dice are in this set or come out in the future sets, this variant is better than the 2-drop as it can bring itself back with Regenerate. I would give this a slightly higher chance of seeing play in both constructed and draft thanks to that Regenerate ability. Can I give this a 2.5 and a 2? It's my video, so I'm just going to stick with it. 2.5 in constructed and a 2 in draft. Alright, next up we have some more Gadgeteer characters. The one on the left is the Common Bane. This is a 5-cost villain fist character that's got that Gadgeteer ability. Again, his stat line is a 144, 155, and 277 stat line, and this is a good 5-cost stat line. But again, just as I mentioned before, the Gadgeteer ability is currently limited with not many good continuous options to pick from. Perhaps the best option is running one of the cold guns, which would in essence make Bane's ability when attacking 50% of the time deal 3 damage and maybe wipe their card text. Is this card worth running for that ability for the 7/7 side and the villain affiliation? Probably not. I'd give this a 1 in constructed as I don't think it'll see any constructed play, and a 2 in draft where stat lines matter a good bit more, but it's still pretty weak if we're speaking about the ability. We also have the Penguin, which is a 4-cost bolt character that's got the villain affiliation and 022, 024, and 144 stat line, and that Gadgeteer keyword. I mean, what do I need to say that I haven't said already? I'm going with the same rating for the Common Penguin that I went for with the common Bane as a 1 in constructed and a 2 in draft, as both cards suffer from the same Gadgeteer drawback. The stat line is a tiny bit low for a 4-drop on this card, and it doesn't have a lot of utility with its ability, so that's what I'm sticking with. Alright, moving along to 2 characters that I am very intrigued by. These are both Mr. Freeze. We've got the uncommon and the common version. The uncommon version is a 5-cost Bolt villain with a 1/4/2, a 1/5/3, and a 1/6/4 stat line. Pretty good stat line for a 5-drop. It's got this really interesting ability that says, when Mr. Freeze blocks or is blocked by an opposing non-villain character die, put a stun token on that die's card. And stun character's card dice cannot attack or block. That card's owner can pay 2 energy of any type, anytime they could use a global ability to remove stun tokens. So let's talk about stun tokens. I think stun tokens are really cool. I like that your opponent can choose to remove them on your turn or on their turn. I think it adds a new layer to the game that I don't think was missing necessarily, but I think makes it just a lot more interesting. And I think the ability itself and the stun token thing itself is actually a pretty great ability, and it accompanies a really decent stat line for this 5-cost. The 5-cost makes it difficult to purchase multiples of this die, which would be extremely powerful if you could get more of these out in combination with something like a Force Block Global. This version especially, with that Force Block Global. Just push, attack, have it get blocked, block with it, that sort of thing, just constantly. 5-cost means you're probably not going to have too many of these, which is probably pretty balanced because this ability on something that's cheap would be crazy. As far as usefulness and constructed, this might make a villain team or two, but it may end up being too costly, even though it has such a great effect. Getting one of these in draft, I think, is powerful in the sense that now your opponent has to assign blockers very carefully and choose attacks in a timely manner when they have the energy to remove tokens, and energy is a lot more sparse in draft than it is when you can build in that ramp in a constructed setting. So I'd give this like a 2 in constructed, and I would give this a 4 in draft, because if you can get one of these out at that 5-cost price, you can protect yourself very easily and make it really difficult on your opponent. Next up, we have the common version of Mr. Freeze. He is also a 5-cost villain with that same stat line. His ability reads, when fielded, put a stun token on an opposing character card, which I think is just as cool, maybe even cooler than the uncommon version's ability. Well, let's be honest, this version of Mr. Freeze's ability is great. Getting to choose where the stun token goes, combined with the fact that it is now a when fielded ability, makes for an extremely cool, no pun intended, control piece. I think it would be really cool to combine this card with something that has an auto KO ability to KO it, and then use momentum to bring it back out to force your opponents to just kind of use their energy for token removal constantly. Be putting tokens on their characters multiple times in a turn if you can with momentum and this auto KO. That would be so awesome. The 5-cost again makes this more difficult to invest heavily in, which I think actually hurts this one less than the uncommon variant, as you're encouraged to cycle this with KO abilities to trigger its when fielded effect more often. If you can cycle this ability consistently, then you don't necessarily need to purchase multiple dice. I could see this card being played regularly in a villain team as some sort of way to control your opponent's ability to block and attack at the same time. We don't really see a lot of that except for in card text wiping situations or just things that keep stuff off the board. So because this is different, I could actually see this being on a villain team. So I'd give this a 3 in constructed, and I would give this a 4 in draft. I think this is a good all-around card. Little high on the price, but it's got a really good bang for your buck ability. Okay, next up we have Parademon, the uncommon version. It is a 4-cost Bolt character with that villain affiliation, an 0/2/1, 0/2/2, and 1/3/2 side on the dice. It's got the Swarm keyword, and it also says while Parademon is active, it deals 1 damage to target opponent when you draw an extra die from the Swarm keyword. Alright, so here we have another interesting topic in the Swarm keyword and its utility on 3+ cost characters. So I've tried finding the usefulness in 3-cost Swarmers before, and every time I put some effort into buying them and getting the ramp started, I find that 3-cost Swarmers are just too slow to provide the ramp that you'd like or need in a game setting. This is a 4-cost Swarmer, so from a ramp perspective on this card alone, I don't expect to see this doing any swarming. The stats also encourage you to stay away from buying multiple of these, which works heavily against the Swarm keyword ability on this card, obviously. The secondary ability on this card, however, is where things get interesting. We have a while active ability that deals a point of damage when you draw off of Swarm. Now this card could be read in 2 different ways. Either it deals 1 damage once you draw any extra dice off of Swarm, which would be not so good, or it deals 1 damage for every extra die you draw off the Swarm keyword. I personally think that they mean the former, though if they meant the latter, this would be really strong. Including this along with something like Multiple Man, the super rare version, adds a clock on your opponent similar to the Harley Quinn that we've talked about a few episodes ago. Now, if we assume that this card deals damage in the way that I explained formerly, in that it deals 1 damage once you've drawn any swarm dice that they've pulled, then I would give this a 2 in constructed, as you may see it from time to time and most often run next to the super rare Multiple Man. Now, if it deals damage for each die that you draw extra from Swarm, then this card is a seriously strong win condition and creates a new Swarm deck archetype with this front and center. If that's the case, then that makes this card a 5 in constructed, and again, that's only if this card is meant to be interpreted that way. In draft, this card is not really worth picking up and running, as it doesn't look like there are enough Swarm characters in this set to justify the secondary ability, and Swarm by itself on a badly statted 4-drop is pretty terrible, so this is a 1 in draft, no matter how you slice it. And finally, let's talk about this super rare Darkseid, because it needs to be talked about. It deserves to be talked about. This is a 6-cost Bolt villain character with an 044-155 and a 377 sides. And his ability says that while Darkseid is active, your sidekicks gain Swarm. Wait, let me say that again. While Darkseid is active, your sidekicks gain Swarm. Okay, let's get the easy stuff out of the way first. Good stats on the dice. 6 cost isn't bad. That ability is crazy. All right, so let's say you have a sidekick in the field and Darkseid in the field, obviously, and then you draw 4 sidekicks. So that means you draw 4 additional dice. Of the additional dice, you draw another 2 sidekicks and Swarm triggers so that you draw 2 other dice again. Of those 2 dice, you draw the last sidekick that would be in your bag because that's how you make 8. And then you draw another die. All of this occurs before the roll and reroll step. And that could happen, like, every turn. This card can go on like any team, as the ability focuses on making an inherent design feature of the game and just an amazing form of ramp. Depending on how the meta shakes out, this could go on every team ever and be a staple. I'd give this a 5 in constructed and a 5 in draft. And if you're not buying this or taking this in draft, I don't know what you take instead, because you got to be looking at something that is amazing to not take Dark. Or you have like 3 of them already. And if you have 3 of them, then you're insane. How did you do that? All right, so those are the cards that we're going to look at for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about these cards. Are you as pumped for that super rare Darkseid as I am? I think that's an amazing card, and I'm so looking forward to seeing if I can get it in a box and then play with it. Sound off in the comments below, and again, thanks for watching.